The following is a presentation of the Radio Misfits Podcast Network.
From the birthplace of modern winemaking, Sonoma, California, welcome to The Winemakers. Local experts Sam Couturi, Bart Hansen, and Brian Casey, along with host John Myers, invite you to listen in as they discuss all facets of winemaking. So sit back, pour yourself a glass, and let's hear what the guys have to say this week.
There you go. A lichen pour today. Awesome. Hey, everybody. Welcome to The Winemakers. I'm John Myers with today, Bart Hansen. And, of course, we are being joined by Jasmine Egan today, which is a special deal. Is this for Thanksgiving? I mean, for Valentine's Day, Thanksgiving. Yeah. Jesus, John.
Valentine's Day works.
We have a lot of special assignments going on today, John. A lot of special assignments.
But we also have a special guest, Doug Stewart from Breggo and Lichen Estate. So how you doing? Welcome.
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely. So
do you know a little bootling?
Well, Breggo's bootling.
Right.
So Breggo means sheep in bootling, and our ranch is 203-acre ranch that used to be a 2,000-acre ranch, and our little cottage house is the headquarters of what that used to be, and we still have been running sheep and cattle, but
right,
we still have animals on the property.
Right. We're going to get into this, so I'm going to back up. Doug, welcome.
Thank you.
Doug Stewart is from Sonoma. I met you a little bit before we all traveled to France together.
Yep.
Probably, this is a Bundschuh connection for me. That's how I came into knowing you.
And Mike Cox.
And Mike Cox, of course. Yes, Mike
That's
listens.
The trip with Joan.
Yeah. Yep. Joni Boots was there, remember?
Yeah.
Joan and Jasmine have become dear friends.
Got it.
She lives right over there. And God, what a trip that was.
When did you guys go?
It was April of 2000.
Nice.
So we had just gotten into escrow on our property, and I had just proposed to my wife.
Yep.
Well, now wife.
And you were on the hunt for you were all about the sparkling.
Yeah.
All about the sparkling on that trip. Like some of us did something. Oh no. And then you went to Chablis. That's what it was.
We all went to Chablis together.
I didn't. I stuck behind and went to, I had a private tour with Jacques Lardier from Domaine Jadot.
Oh, wow.
At the time.
So Chablis, I thought we all arrived through Chablis, and it was one stop, and the guy brought out stuff from the 70s, and it was just spectacular.
Nice.
Just to see how great a 30-year-old Chardonnay could be was mind-blowing.
Yeah. It was an awesome trip.
And grueling. Mike organized I want to say 4 stops a day, starting at 9 a.m. And I'm not a morning drinker, but
Right.
How come I always was told you're not really don't age white wines?
bad information.
Because the winemaking in the United States wasn't quite what it is now.
Yeah.
And so the wines didn't last very long. So therefore they just told you that white wines weren't supposed to be aged.
Yeah. So what I just poured is a 2022 Chardonnay that was made by Ryan and Sarah, who were the Fell team. Fell being what Breggo became after they brought the winery to Sonoma. So this was made on 8th Street, but is made with Farrington and Hine vineyard fruit. And
so crisp.
Yeah, so crisp. And this is going to last a decade. Easy. Sure. But I also just brought one library wine from Breggo, which was the last vintage that I was a winemaker, and that's 2009. I started the company in 2005, sold it in 2009. And I'll let you be the judge.
Yeah. So I want to go back a little bit farther though, because
sure.
You didn't just leave Sonoma Valley and go on and decide to start in the wine business. You weren't just like part of the wine fabric that was, those early families.
The winerati.
Is that what you called them? The winerati?
I just did.
Oh, that was good. That was good. And so I want to talk about your path a little bit. I mean, again, when I knew you had Howler, right?
Yep.
And you were making Ecuadorian gelato.
Close.
Okay.
I had written a book. I'd done a research project and written a book about the Amazon, but it was the Brazilian Amazon.
Okay.
And Ecuador was like one of the very few countries that touches the Amazon that I hadn't been to when I met my wife, future wife. But it was, most of my fruit came from Brazil and Colombia. And we were the first to export acai from Brazil in 1993.
Okay.
And had a 10-year run of it.
Yeah. And then
bought the farm in the middle of that.
Right.
venture.
And then sold that, right? Sold the company?
Nope.
No, you didn't sell the company. Okay.
I was exited, but not.
Oh, okay. Got it. Got it.
I got paid to get out of the business.
Right. Okay.
Exited.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. The largest food company in the world.
So you bought the property, and I remember our first trip up there to get a tour of it before any was planted. You took us all around. And,
Yeah.
I mean, it was beautiful. I remember it being tops of hills, steep hills,
Yep.
and then flatlands down on kind of the quote unquote valley floor.
Right. So the negotiation to get the property took 4 years in large part because I wanted to redraw the map. Because the property lines that were originally for where that house is, our cottage, they didn't have virtually any flat ground. And there was a part next to, on the other side of the creek where it was nice and flat. And I thought water, pond. And so we gave up, how'd it work? 13 acres of goat country on the top of the ridge. Did you go bike riding with us, like mountain biking?
Yeah.
Awesome. I remember that day. And we took on another, 53 acres down below. So we got most of the plantable ground. We got the pond. Yeah.
And so at that point, though, and at some point you kind of just take over. At that point there, you were or were not intending on making your own wine. You wanted to sell grapes.
Yeah. So my lifelong dream, at least since I was a teenager, was to be a farmer and a writer.
Okay. So, and I want to preface this with, I want you to set the stage with what was going on in the Anderson Valley during that era, because Anderson Valley was all small family-owned businesses.
Other than Roeder and Scharfenberg.
Right. And then it started to shift. Napa properties started buying in. And I just want you to go through that while you're telling the story.
Sure. I mean, my neighbors were people like Sue and, literally surrounding our property was all small family-owned parcels.
Right.
Today it's, Kendall Jackson's two parcels above us and has been for a long time. They're the second largest owner. The Jackson family is the second largest owner of property in the valley, and grapes.
Right.
And then Roeder being the largest.
Yeah.
But now, I mean, Cake Bread's across the street. My neighbor was one of the founder of Three Thieves, and he has had multiple very large wine companies. I would say winemakers and owners like me are not the exception.
Right.
At all. I mean, you can find a dozen wineries, tasting rooms on the highway where you'll see the owner wandering around, if not pouring for you. And that's unique. I think that disappeared in Napa when I went to high school. I was in high school in Napa. But from a vineyard ownership standpoint, it is getting much more scarce, having substantial parcels owned by not corporate.
Yeah, because I mean, at some point, Duckhorn came and bought a bunch of property.
Yes.
I don't know who owns Duckhorn anymore, but
it's Duckhorn, but it's a private equity company.
Right. So you intended to sell grapes, and talk through that a little bit.
So my first calls were to people who I knew in the business. So the Bialys, I was a high school classmate of Wendy Bialy, so called Bob. I knew that he was interested in doing some Pinot. This is in 2000.
Okay.
Copan was really the only focused on Anderson Valley Pinot producer. We had tasted a bottle of his wine at Jardiniere, I want to say in 99, and we're just blown away. And so called Wells, called Mike Benziger.
Right.
So all three came up and looked at the property. Mike, interestingly, came with the guy who lives not very far across the street. Alan York, rest his soul.
Rest his soul.
But got 2 pre-plant contracts that day.
Yeah. Oh, you did.
And was ready and actually prepped the ground and ordered the vines. And then March of 2001 hit when we were, going to receive the vines later. And I called them all up and I said, "Do you really want us to plant this? Or do you want to go through with this contract?" And everybody just said no.
Okay, first of all, you have to explain what a pre-plant
because they don't
contract
exist
is,
anymore.
right? So please explain that and then explain why.
Back in the go-go days, I would say most of Anderson Valley's vines today were planted between 1995 and 2001. And at the time, there was this massive expansion in plantings across the state, including the Central Valley. Oftentimes grapes that didn't belong where they were planted. And so then 2001, the .com downturn hit, and it hit California hardest, and a huge portion of certainly Anderson Valley fruit is sold locally, and then another huge portion is sold through the high end places like Williams-Sonoma in Sonoma County, meaning they've been long buyers of Anderson Valley fruit, and people didn't know what to do. Like they were going to go from having 1 year inventory to 3, which did happen.
Right.
So I just didn't plant. And
Okay.
the cost of the property was very little.
Right.
And so even planting 10 acres would have doubled my mortgage probably. So I didn't. And planting it the way that I plant it, which is I planted meter by meter.
Right.
And do it organically. So there's a much higher cost to planting that way and farming. But it's justified.
Right.
I'll go into that.
Right.
But yeah, so I just decided to not, and we let that ground sit fallow until 2007. So then that was 2001. My little ice cream factory and Willy Wonka thing in San Francisco. Did you ever come to the factory?
I don't recall. I don't think so.
So
But I feel like
in our last year, we brought in some Italian equipment that made it very automated, 150 ice cream bars a minute type thing.
Right.
And it was a blast.
I think what I remember is I remember the product.
Our brand was Howler Products, and we also that last year we made Skinny Cow.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a good one.
Did?
Yeah.
They're actually really good. I liked them.
Was that a contract thing?
Yes.
Yeah.
That was the contract.
Yeah.
So
we laughed. You're not a big fan of Skinny Cow anymore, or it was the contract.
He's
probably still on you probably still can't talk about
a lifelong silencer thing. Yeah. No, I as I said, I got paid to get out of business by the largest and third largest ice cream companies in the United States, and so I didn't bankrupt and I didn't lose the farm.
Right.
That's perfect.
But it was not pleasant at all. And I had 30 employees one day and 2 the next. And so that teaches you a lot about business.
Yeah.
And so we had investors and it wasn't, today looking back, it was not a lot of money. We had $1.1 million investors over 3 rounds. The last round was the biggest, and that was probably almost half of it. And they were venture funds. Yeah. $500,000 in venture funds being, but we lost all of that money. I lost, I'd borrowed against the farm and lent it to the company and lost all that. Not all of it, but lots of it. And so I had a big mortgage come the end of 2004. But I had some cash that came back where I could either pay off that mortgage or start something. And by then, if I look at Lichen, where I planted the ground in 2008, I prepped the ground in 2007. Our first bottle was bottled in 2013. That is not a formula for cash flow.
No.
And so I started Breggo, my first company, with purchased fruit.
Right.
And I was a puppy. I was 38 years old. And a generation younger than everybody who I was going to buy fruit from. And
you also weren't from there.
Well, I was by then.
Oh, yeah, I guess you were.
So we had lived full time there, and people had seen our farm really change. like we took a place that had been dilapidated and made it a little gem on the highway. We're right on the highway.
Yeah. I think I slept in my car when we went up.
You were
there.
better off because the spiders would have gotten you.
Yeah. It was a shell of a house.
Yes. It was literally falling down.
Yeah.
And we spent the next 3 years like every weekend coming to Anderson Valley, not sore and leaving with sore thumbs and sore backs.
Right.
But we totally gutted it and we just rebuilt it ourselves. And so in 2005, I was looking at my options and I thought I can't afford to plant vineyard. And so I went to all the best farmers in the valley and I said, we would like to make wines with your name on the label, meaning the vineyard designate. Right. And now that seems stupid obvious.
Right.
But we were the first to do it in Anderson Valley. William Selliam was buying Farrington for 10 years, 15 years. Before that, Savoy was selling to a number of top tier Sonoma County producers. And both of them had been kind of abused by some of the big companies, meaning they both sold to small top tier producers, but also, let's not name names, but very large global wine companies. And the big ones were saying, you know what? Pinot's worth $1,500 a ton now.
Right.
And that's what you're going to get.
Right.
And both owners were like, you can go yourselves, literally. And I got great fruit. We got Chardonnay and Pinot from Savoy. We started with Pinot Noir from Farrington, but ended up with, he reminded me, 5 different varietals from Farrington. Kurt Schoeneman, after I exited Breggo, was bragging about how he had, who else do you know who has 5 different varietals from a single vineyard that have gotten over 90 points from Robert Parker?
Right.
And I said, Kurt, all 5 of those were from me.
Perfect.
I mean, he'd gotten lots of 90s on Pinot, but he has Pinot Noir Chardonnay. I think they may have taken the Syrah out. They had the most spectacular Sauvignon Blanc. That was own rooted in 1971, and it got phylloxera, but and Gewurz. And so we're getting, this year we got Gewurz, Pinot, and Chardonnay from them.
So see, I kind of forgot about that. I was thinking that you planted and that's where Breggo started, but you started on purchased fruit. So you jumped right into the wine business.
Yeah. And I thought, well, people talk about Pinot as being the heartbreak grape. First of all, that's not true. And I think there's a mystery or a taught mystery about winemaking. But I'd spent 10 years formulating fruit products with exotic fruits that nobody had ever tasted, and then spent the last year and a half of my sorbet and gelato and ice cream venture working with a PhD from Dryers on food science. And so you learn food science as an ice cream maker. You learn sorbet. In sorbet, you learn fruit. You don't want it to rot on purpose, whereas as a winemaker, you do want it to rot on purpose.
Big difference.
And then the pumps, the sanitation, the tanks, everything in ice cream. I mean, back when I was a kid in Sonoma, you could go to virtually any winery and you'd see a dairy tank because everything had been dairy and then it moved to wine. And dairy tanks are better quality because they have to be, meaning a better quality stainless because you can kill people if it's not perfectly sanitary. And so what I didn't realize when I got into the wine business was how much I actually knew about the process of winemaking and the food science behind winemaking. Because I'd never really talked to my friends about it. Like I had all these winemaker friends, and we didn't talk about winemaking. We talked about the business side, but ice cream and winemaking don't seem the same. And then the other things that you gain from running a ice cream company for 10 years, we became the #1 organic sorbet company in the country. You learn distribution, you learn finance, you learn branding, you learn how to get ripped off by distributors and stores. And so you margins and that kind of stuff. I think I've actually, even in Breggo days, very successfully avoided that side of the wine distribution world. I know it exists. My brother, who still lives in the Valley, worked for what became RNDC, worked for Young's Estates Group for years.
And he had restaurants. He had a restaurant for years before that.
Yes.
So he knew both sides of it.
Yeah, and he was slinging million case products.
Right.
And that world is so different from a 2,500 case winery like Lichen is. And Breggo started at 1,800 cases. We ended up, the year I sold it, we were at 8,000 cases. I think that's kind of where they stayed.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
It is.
It is. That's
Yeah.
kudos to you, dude.
It was a good 5-year run.
Yeah. That's absolutely.
How did you? Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
How did you end up in Anderson Valley? And if you can, since we're very familiar with Sonoma Valley and the climate and the soils, etc., tell us the differences up in Anderson
Sure. So
Valley.
per Bart's earlier statement, I've been kind of a sparkling fanatic since college. My roommate in college and my daughter's godfather, he would go to France. He would buy and sell art and go to France on his art sales. And one time he came back, our senior year, we were living in a double wide trailer. And he came back with 12 bottles of all like the.
Wait a minute, where was the double wide trailer parked?
Right in the middle of Stanford campus. We were the last to live in it. They plowed him after we left. And I was an RA of the double wides. But yeah, we took pride in our double wide.
I'm sure you did. Sure you did.
What's funny is I didn't even realize it was a double wide until graduation. And I had all my aunts and uncles and grandparents come and they met me at the trailer, and every single one of them said, "Oh, it's a double wide." Like,
It's like, damn.
dude, it's still a trailer. And a pretty trash 40-year-old trailer at that. So yeah, and in fact, 6 of those actually migrated from Stanford to Anderson Valley, and Mary Elke's house on the Donnelly Creek Ranch was one of those, because
Seriously?
they found out that Stanford was saying take him for $1 and Mary had,
Whoa.
yeah, and Mary had been at Stanford when I was teaching. Her son Matt, who's now running their farm in Anderson Valley, was a 7th grader when I started teaching 8th grade at Jordan Middle School. Wow. So anyway, to answer your first question, I was a Sonoma County denizen as a kid, but my mom moved back here in 93, I think, and lived in Sebastopol. And as a fan of sparkling wine, I thought, where's the best place in Sonoma County to grow sparkling? And the answer is West County. And the farther west, the better, essentially. And so I was looking for a home and a farm in West County and finding lots of, bedraggled homes on 5 acres for $800,000.
Yeah.
Right. And I was trying to do the math on how you could make a living on 5 acres of a farm that also already had a home cut out on it. Right. And I was sitting back in the day, the Press Democrat used to advertise houses and properties. And so I was reading, I always read it every weekend. I would go up there every weekend and there was this line that said 163 acres in Anderson Valley. I want to say 72 plantable, $499,000.
Cha-ching.
And I was like,
Yeah.
I was calling something different, but so I called up the realtor who was listed, who answered the phone and said, "No, we're serious. Go up there." So I drove up that day. That was June 6th of 1996. I've got a picture with a date stamp on it. We used to have pictures.
I mean, it's pretty amazing because it's highway frontage, right? To answer your question, Anderson Valley, John, north of Sonoma County, it's a valley that runs
essentially north-south.
Essentially north-south.
But because of the way, so it goes from Cloverdale to the Mendocino coast.
Right.
And it's almost due north because of the way the coast is shifting, meaning it juts out at Point Arena,
right,
and then comes back.
The Navarro River.
It is the coldest appellation on the West Coast.
Really?
So the way that it's on the Pacific Ocean, the Navarro is like a gun barrel from the top to the bottom.
Excuse me. Watch this. Hey, Joan.
guests and visitors.
Are we allowed to pause?
We are allowed to pause. Absolutely.
Hi, Joan. It's Doug Stewart.
Oh, it's so funny. She didn't know who it was.
All right. I am going to pause. And we're back after Joan Stagnito just shows up. Everybody knows Joan.
Yeah.
Especially everybody knows Cash.
Yes.
Right.
There you go. Her pup.
Yeah. So you're saying it's a shotgun.
Yeah. It is pointing at the Gulf of Alaska. And so if you think about how the jet streams is in my head, but how the Gulf of Mexico has one flow of water,
right,
and the Gulf of Alaska has another.
Right.
Those typically meet between Santa Cruz and San Francisco. So if you're swimming in the waters of San Francisco, you're in a wetsuit, and you can swim without a wetsuit in Santa Cruz.
Right.
That where that is shifts during the year, and it shifts not just seasonally, but in like El Nino, La Nina shifts. But it sometimes gets as far north as the Russian River, often gets to San Francisco, never gets to Anderson Valley. So we are seeing the winds and the cold water from the Gulf of Alaska all year, every year.
Right.
So it's much colder than, say, Carneros or
right,
even the Sonoma Coast. So the Sonoma Coast, what I think of as true Sonoma Coast, Cazadero, where Hirsch and whatnot are, those are pretty high up.
Yep.
And they are warm
Yep.
during the night and
they get warm.
Yeah.
When, if the fog isn't in, then they get warm up there. Mm-hmm. If the fog comes in, then that helps keep them cooler. But they do get, it does get hot.
So we have an appellation just south of Anderson Valley in Mendocino County called the Mendocino Ridge Appellation, and they call it Islands in the Sky. We purchased fruit from Alan Green, who was one of the founders of Anderson Valley's appellation back in '83 of Greenwood Ridge. We got Riesling from him the last year that I owned Breggo, and Ryan and I left the valley floor, and it was 50 degrees and foggy, and got to Greenwood Ridge in our jackets, and it was 85 at 10:30 in the morning. So
it's interesting though. The fog has so many different critical points of impact.
Sure.
I mean, it's people rely on it.
Yeah.
Every single day.
Yeah.
And it's part of the weather pattern that you're looking for.
Yeah, totally.
But who would have thought fog?
Well, and I want to do the flip side of that though. So in Anderson Valley, they have the people who are closer to the coast call themselves the deep end, and I'm not going to make fun of them.
Off the deep
end. And I'm not going to make fun of myself as the shallow ender, but it's actually it's both the fog and the temperature inversions. So with the ridges, when it turns nighttime, the cold air drops into the valley floor and the hot air rises above that cold air. So you've got a temperature inversion. And that typically rises up to about 900 feet in the Anderson Valley. So our farm is at 300 feet at the ground floor. So it's 600 feet up, and the ridges where we are about 1,200, 1,300 feet. So all that cold air is dumping down and cooling us off every afternoon. There's the wind that's coming in from the Pacific, and then the cold air from the ridges is coming down. And especially overnight, as cold air is generated, it keeps coming down. So interestingly, the mountains are higher on the south end of the Anderson Valley, so on the Boonville end, and the coldest, what do you call them? Heat days,
right?
Locations. Ours is the second, compared to the one across the street, which is on the riverbed. That's the coldest measured spot in Anderson Valley, which is pretty far away from the coast, but you've got both that coastal influence with the wind,
right,
and you've got those cold ridges dumping.
Right.
Well, the cold from
those ridges.
Yeah. Dumping
because it's a little bit, it's wider farther south, right? It gets wider, but you're it starts to.
There's
right?
a pinch point. We're in the pinch point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's Boonville is like in a bowl. And we're in the pinch point. So going back to your question, Anderson Valley, cold climate. For certainly since when I arrived, the farmers have been promoting themselves as a great place to grow Pinot Noir. We have the Anderson Valley Pinot Noir weekend is our biggest weekend of the year. But I was actually attracted because of sparkling. And I think just like champagne, the best sparkling is made in cold climates.
Right.
And so that in Europe is migrating now, meaning the climate change, Champagne's getting warmer, Alsace is getting warmer, Burgundy is getting warmer because they're continental.
Where do you go?
England,
Yeah,
Sweden. And so they're now making really great sparkling wine in England.
Right.
Interestingly, there was a professor from the Coolmar, which is in Alsace. We used to call it the Alsace Fest, who came over, and it was probably somewhere around 2010 when he showed the graph of how climate change was affecting France, specifically the Coolmar station, and compared it to Anderson Valley. And you saw this, I'm going to say almost a hockey stick line going up for that continental European cold climate. Anderson Valley is flatlined. And the reason is we're sitting on the largest heat sink in the world. And so I think the same is going to be true for all of the coastal ranges.
What's that heat sink?
The Pacific Ocean.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about.
Because you're how many miles from the
Geology.
Pacific Ocean
We're-
as the crow flies?
I think 10 as the crow flies and 16 or
Right.
it might be more by the river.
Right.
So what's your soil like up there?
So our 7 acres, our giant 7-acre vineyard, meter by meter, so it's 28,000 vines, is sitting on 3 very different soil types. One is called Bare Wallow Wolfie Loam. Another is a different side of that complex with more sand. So it's a sandier loam. And then we have a very clay-influenced block where all of our, a lot of our Pinot Gris grows. And those two, this loam, this Bare Wallow Wolfie, it's a place in Anderson Valley, but it's named after that place. Those are predominant throughout the valley. Either and you could take if somebody took an arrow and shot at a 400 to 500 foot elevation, you would find that clay lens almost from
Throughout the whole
the whole valley on the north side of the valley, and that has I'm gonna blank on it. A deadly stone that kills vines. What am I thinking?
the blue. It's blue shale.
This should be on the tip of my tongue.
Yeah.
Anyway, when I stop
And
thinking
it
about
does. How? I mean,
so
not really
it's
sure.
toxic to vines. So we put SO4 rootstock in that block because SO4 can handle, and that block is far enough below where these rocks are that it's not toxic. Manganese. Is it manganese? It's been 15 years since I did this.
have you ever heard of this rock?
Oh yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
up Benziger, there was a vineyard called Blue Rock, and the vines always just struggled there. And
Yeah.
it was all planted on this like blue shale, and the chemical is I can't find it.
Well, we're
yet.
going for
We'll come back to
Google
it.
at this moment.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll cut that out.
Right? No, we don't cut anything out, Doug.
We don't edit. You can say what you want.
Yeah.
It's all okay.
So anyway, the whole valley has this influence, and you can actually see it because of the landslides. So you see all these kind of washed out
Right.
hills 200-300 feet above the valley floor, and it's kind of from end to end. After I don't know if it's in the redwoods, but the redwoods start after. I mean, I'm going to describe it as Handley and Lula, the far end of the valley from us in terms of wineries.
Right.
And then it's all redwoods to the coast, and it's state parks and beautiful, but a totally different thing.
Yeah, and it's weird because it really is. As you say, the pinch point is about where you're at, and it gets narrow and narrow until you hit. It's just river and redwoods in the hills.
Yep.
So
Yeah, and so the Navarro frequently floods down there, and so
think about when it used to flood. Like, I mean, that's why it's that way, right? It flooded that whole canyon. You know, the whole valley flooded back in the old days.
And deposited it all right on your farm.
Right.
Actually, that's true. So the
Right?
river at one point probably did go through our farm
Yeah.
because there's a set of rocks that are about, I want to say, 110 feet down, where from 40 to 110 feet we get a lot of water, and relative to the Anderson Valley, there are virtually no agricultural wells in the valley, but we have a 30-gallon a minute well. And that's because once upon a time there was and that lens of rock, because of the way the river migrated across the valley floor, I assume connects to the Navarro. Well, not the Navarro, the Anderson Creek. That's I don't know, 1,000 feet away from us.
So I want to talk about the '09 Anderson Valley Shard first, or at least talk about it.
Savoy.
Savoy. It's really beautiful. I mean, it's still so alive, and I mean, it's not like it's all tertiary, right? It's really kind of developed, kind of mature flavors, but really beautiful. And when you taste it against that, you can see a lineage for sure, right?
Yeah, pointing to our Anderson Valley, not a vineyard designate. So
Right.
that today would be $75 wine. This would be 35.
Okay, so you grow Breggo to 8,000, and then what happened? What transformed? What was the or what was the
Inspiration.
And how long did that take to grow to 8,000?
Well, so I was opportunistic. Breggo had done just stupid well. I got all these contracts handshakes right before Sideways came out. And so literally the Pinot Noir business was transformed by a movie. And unfortunately for the Bunchus, the Merlot business was as well at the time. But not mocking. Literally, I had gotten the best vineyards, the best known vineyards from Mendocino County, in some ways in the Pinot world, right before that happened.
right?
And the way I did it is I said, I will pay you what you think your fruit is worth, not what the big guys are offering. And they appreciated that, and they worked with me, and they gave me insanely great terms and insanely great pricing, and so we were able to, did I say this already? Yeah, we were able to get some good scores, but by our second vintage, Robert Parker called our Pinot Gris the finest ever in the New World, and we were. According to our Wine Growers Association, they did a survey of how many single vineyard or any Mendocino appellated wines got over 90 points in that publication, and we were 9 out of 17.
That's a beautiful way to start, isn't it?
Sure is.
Yeah. So we
Nice.
This was still 2008 when we got Best New Winery from Food and Wine, and like Tanzer and Wine Spectator. We were really doing well in the ratings world.
Anderson Valley was
Anderson Valley was
up.
hot.
Yep.
Not in it's a cool climate, damn it.
Right.
But yes, it was blowing up, and I was getting like people were poking around so
So people, do you get phone calls from lawyers? Do you get phone calls from owners?
You get phone calls from I don't want to.
That's all right.
I don't want to
It's
use the
all
word minions, but you get phone calls from owners. So
Come on, Sam. We're talking about what happens when someone comes and wants to buy your winery.
So nice.
Say yes.
So what if Constellation walks in here tomorrow?
No,
You know,
so-
and
so-
offers
No.
$100 million.
This is way cooler than Constellation.
Yeah. So the answer was we were saying no, and
Well, yeah, you say no first.
yeah. Well, no, we meant it.
Yes.
So and in retrospect, had I been able to say no and mean it, even though we did very well in the sale, we sold the brand, kept the land, did very well with the sale, sold it to Cliff Lady, and
Shout out Chris Tynan.
okay, is he making their wines now?
Cliff Lady. Yeah,
Okay.
He's the winemaker there.
Got it. So I've only dealt with Ryan and Sarah because they're at Fell. Have dealt with the president, Tony. They were tremendous and made this whole Breggo thing easy. And I want to give a shout out to Cliff and to Tony. Anyway, yeah, it was the banks is the answer. That there was a snake or a set of snakes in a bank that was financing virtually every small producer in high-end Pinot Noir. And there was a, let's call it a, no, I'm not going to use that word today.
That's
but
right.
It was a terrible event, I would say. And the best, the producers who were doing the best all sold within like 18 months of each other. And they all had the same bank. And I haven't talked to the others about it, but we were forced to sell. We were told that, Rob McMillan said, we think this whole market's going to tank. This is in the fall of 2008 after the whole Lehman Brothers thing.
Right.
We had our best quarter ever in the spring of 2009. So Rob was wrong with us.
Right.
I know that after we sold it, it remained profitable throughout the downturn. It was a great little business. And I regretted selling it. And so did my wife. And we started Lichen. We'd just planted the estate vineyard in 2008. So perfect timing before instead of after and it was a slow recovery. I mean, the 08, 09 downturn took years and years to recover from.
So did you not, I'm trying to remember, did you not make wine for Lichen until
2012,
until it came on?
Yeah. We had a 1 ton vintage on 28,000 vines. We brought in 1 ton in 2011. We had 8 tons sitting out there in July, and then
I was gonna say 2011 was a hard first vintage for those poor baby
mildew
grapes.
annihilated
especially
half of
in the
that.
Anderson Valley.
And then turkeys got the rest. So we got 1 ton that we didn't drop and that ton became the base wine for our Cellars, which I didn't bring, unfortunately, but we make a multi-vintage blend that 2 barrels of 2011 Pinot Noir combined with 6 barrels of 2012 Pinot Noir made just a spectacular blend that I could sell in the summer of 2013 because I was desperate for cash. And people who were tasting that versus what would become our estate program were like, I like the Cellars better. And so we kept 2 barrels and we did it again. 6 and 2 every time, and we've done that ever since.
Do you just bottle it non-vintage?
Yeah, the current bottling, the most recent bottling is Cellars Volume 12, which has 13 vintages. Wow, is that right? No, Cellars Volume 11, 12 vintages. Yeah, 11, 12, 13, right. all the way through 22. Yeah, and it's awesome. It gets better every year, and
So you keep.
So
say the process. Say the process again from
we blend
the first 2 barrels.
We blend 8
of
barrels.
2011.
Blend 8 barrels.
Yes, we blend 8 barrels. It's always 2 barrels. It's a quarter of the entire history of our vineyard,
right?
And 3/4 new vintage.
And you blend it all together.
We bottle 6 barrels.
You bottle 6 barrels of it,
and keep 2 for the
2
next
of
time.
that
That's
blend
right.
for the.
And interestingly, those 2 barrels act. So the word Cellars comes from sherry and Madeira, and it's the process, and it's also the vessels
right.
that they use, where they typically will have a very large vessel where they'll drain, let's say 10% and bottle that, and then put the new vintage on top of that.
Right.
And so they taste like sherry and Madeira, which is an older wine. They've got this, I think of it as a hazelnut character. Let's just say sherry and Madeira character.
Yes.
And so those 2 barrels that are now, let's say another 12 months older than the Cellars that we barreled, always has that character. Meaning, so they've now been in barrel for somewhere between 24 months and 10 years. And they developed that character fairly quickly. So you get this mystery character in that wine every year that gives it an older component, but because of the 75% new wines, and we'll talk about it when we get to the reds. But I coached Bart before I came to say that I don't like to talk about my own wines. I'd prefer other people's mouths be the judge.
Bart, turns out not super coachable. Dane's more coachable.
Yeah, Dane might be more coachable. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so you just tasted our 2 Chardonnays.
I jumped right into the 09.
Right.
I figured 0 to 6.
I made my comments about the 09. I mean, it's an 09 Chardonnay that, would I pick it out as an aged Chardonnay at this point? I don't know that I would, but it's a really intriguing wine and really delicious. But I don't drink a lot of Chardonnay.
And neither did I.
Right.
There's just like a sweet fruit to it.
I know.
And some of that, I'm guessing this is the age. Also, Anderson Valley.
That would be my point. Anderson Valley does
Right?
I mean,
great acid.
Right.
It's the acidity.
I'm surrounded by all
sweet
this
acid.
deadhead.
That's exactly what it is.
Does everybody know that your this place is full of deadhead stuff?
Sorry, who are the Grateful Dead and why are they following me? Right.
So I feel like welcome to my acid party. Sorry.
Acid is accepted at this residence. Yes.
Acid required.
Right.
But yeah, so Anderson Valley, if you pick it right, and we can over-ripen fruit for sure, but if you pick it right, it has this great native acid, and it gives wines a longevity that is amazing. And so in the purchase back from Cliff Lady of the Breggo brand, we got not just a large quantity of Chardonnay, which we've bottled as Farrington, Savoy, Vineyard Designates, and Anderson Valley Chardonnay. We also got the entire library. So from 2005 to 2012, we got 85 different cases of wine, and it's almost everything we made in terms of Pinot Noir and Chardonnay.
That's cool. So
It's amazing.
yeah, I mean, you're going to have to talk a little bit about how that conversation came up of like, how is it that Breggo was all of a sudden available? Like, I know it had to do it. I guess I heard that it had something to do with the fact that Savoy Vineyard traded hands, right?
I think it was more strategic than that, actually.
Okay.
So
can you talk a little bit about the history of Savoy Vineyard and it?
Not with an empty glass.
Right.
There you go.
So,
And then Doug, so I just poured myself a little bit of the Pinot Gris. Am I supposed to bring the sparkling out next?
the white Pinot.
The white Pinot next.
So Savoy Vineyard was the preeminent vineyard in Mendocino County. I would argue that it has been one of the preeminent vineyards in Chardonnay and Pinot Noir anywhere in the United States. Most of it made outside of Anderson Valley, and recently all of it made outside of Anderson Valley. And so
meaning that the wineries buying the fruit
are all,
none of them have facility in the
that's
valley.
correct. We were the only one ever. Well, not ever.
Or they're not even a Anderson Valley winery, right? It's not even a matter that they don't they have a tasting room
right,
there.
It's like yeah.
Right.
It's Literite, Radio Coteau.
Right. A tour. Right.
Pay.
None of, yeah.
Does Nick Bradley get his hands on any of this Savoy? Probably, if he doesn't, he wants to.
I imagine somewhere along the way when they had when they had Sojourn. I mean, I guess he still has Sojourn, but
Right.
I don't know. Yeah.
I don't know all of them since we.
Right.
So when I sold Breggo to Cliff said, "I love property." I was like,
property?
yeah. Well, I don't know what the conversation was, but let's just say he loves property. And I'm not, that's not an insult. I think I admire that. And he said, "What do you think?" And I said, "Well, I think Rich Savoy may be interested in retiring." And his vineyard is the most renowned. That and Farrington are the two most renowned vineyards. And so I invited Rich Savoy over to my porch and I said, "What do you think?" And he sold it to Cliff. So
will you I don't know if you said this already, but just sort of like place in the in Mendocino County and Anderson Valley where the vineyard is and
where Savoy is.
Savoy,
sure.
How big it is, like what kind of
Savoy
as
is.
If I've never heard of it.
Oh, let me finish that story.
Okay.
So he bought Savoy in 2010 or 11. They just sold Savoy to Lichen Estate over the summer, which is what triggered me calling them and saying, "You're out of the business." And they very intentionally, they had a press release. They said they're focusing on their Napa Valley property, Cabernet, and that was strategic. It was not like a whoops. And so that's why it was such a friendly, I think, negotiation. They were out of the business. So Savoy so our property sits on the northeast side of the highway. Savoy also sits on the northeast side of the highway. Our property sits at the exact halfway point between Boonville and Philo. So at a little pinch point in the Boonville end of the valley. Savoy sits a mile past Philo, so 4 miles beyond our property, and it's also in a little pinch point in the valley.
So, and past Philo, as in going northeast,
Correct.
or northwest, going towards the ocean,
Toward the ocean.
up the canyon,
Yes.
or down the river.
Yes.
Okay.
It sounds like just such a beautiful place. To
Well, and
live,
it is,
first
and
of
it's
all.
also so different geographically, John, than basically anything else in Sonoma County.
Oh, it's way up there.
Well, and
I mean,
and the way
it has to be.
the valley goes basically from the southeast to the northwest is a totally different direction than most valleys in
Right, and
California, right?
And you stepped in late, but I was explaining how if you think of it as a gun barrel, it's pointing at the Gulf of Alaska.
Right.
And we get that weather system and we get that ocean temperature all year long.
Right.
And so we get a cool wind reliably every afternoon, whether it's summer or winter, but in the summer especially. So we can have a 50-degree diurnal range for lots of the summer. 40 degrees is normal. That's average.
And it just shoots right up the valley, right?
Yep.
Up past Boonville into
Oh yeah.
Northville.
Well, and the cold
Right.
cold air comes down, and so we'll have a 95-degree day sometimes or more in the summer, and it'll be 48 at night.
Right.
And so you get the great acidity from that reformation in the grape, and I mean stuff doesn't. I use 95 because stuff doesn't grow above 95. It sort of shuts down, but our typical summer days can be quite warm.
Right.
But it's that average temperature and it's that diurnal range that makes the wines.
Did you forget the wine?
No,
Pinot Blanc?
right here. White Pinot Noir.
White Pinot Noir. Okay.
There we go. I was looking at your website, and
I was so deep in
whoever's
Anderson Valley
taking
that I
your
didn't
photos,
notice. Sorry, Bart.
it's beautiful.
You're in the deep end.
I was in the deep end. I was way past Philo. I was in Elk. I was thinking about going up the coast to Mendocino. I'm there already.
Yeah, so it is. So if I can give a shout out, I'm also the president of the Anderson Valley Wine Growers as of October. It is my commute. I live in Healdsburg and I commute to Boonville.
I mean, that's a tough commute.
It's windy.
It's
but
not
it is
tough.
It's literally I think the most beautiful road from 101 to the coast anywhere in California.
It is absolutely.
Stunning.
You were correct.
Like
the
it's
redwood, the driving through the redwoods, in that section is what every tourist should see.
Yep. But it's also if you go over Yorkville Highlands.
Yeah, it's the progression of it, right?
Yeah,
Right.
you're dropping
Because-
through Oak
Right.
Highlands, and in the winter, much of it drops its leaves, and that's where the walls of lichen,
Right.
and they glow in the morning. With it's just so spectacular. And even though I drive it every day, I'm like, wow, this is spectacular.
Yeah. It's beautiful. And even I've done this only a couple times, but when you drive in from Ukiah, what is that road?
Oh, coming over
253.
there.
253.
If you don't mind cliffs.
Right. Well, that's just it. I mean,
Yeah,
but a
that's-
spectacular drive in.
No, Anderson Valley is absolutely spectacular, and the thing that stops people from going there is those roads. It's that they're so windy and so steep in some places, and used to be so unsafe. But they solved that with those little bumpy things in the middle.
Yeah.
2012, they put a new highway in and they put the bumpy things in the middle, and people stopped crossing.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a beautiful area. And then just the fact that you go from such dryness, at the top of Yorkville Highlands.
Believe it or not, it's wetter.
Yeah.
Is it really?
Yeah, they get like 80 inches of rain a year.
They do.
More than down in the valley.
Well, I mean more just the way
It looks dry.
looks.
Yeah, it looks dry.
Looks barren.
It's oak and chaparral, but it's actually the ridges are technically a rainforest from the coast all the way to the highlands, all the way to Yorkville Highlands. Yep. having studied rainforests as a kid.
What's the food scene in Anderson Valley like right now?
We've partnered with one of the restaurants that was thriving before COVID, got pummeled by the COVID closures, and then pummeled more by the difficulty in finally finding people to work at restaurants.
Right.
That's Janelle of the Bewildered Pig. So we're doing food together now. We having just occupied a new tasting room where Phillips Hill used to be, which is between Navarro Greenwood Ridge on one side and Toomey and Rotorua on the other. We're going to be doing pop-ups and winemaker dinners. We announced a winemaker dinner with her and sold out in 2.5 hours.
Wow. Awesome.
Yeah. So she's coming back. I want to give a shout out to her with us. And then you've got the Boonville Hotel. Johnny Schmidt is the co-owner of the Boonville Hotel with my neighbor Roger Scamanga. Johnny comes from a line of Schmidts who started the French Laundry. And Johnny is quite a spectacular chef himself, but his nephew is awesome and makes the food there now. So he's the head chef. He used to be at Shed in Healdsburg, and I did a winemaker dinner with him, I think in like 2015 or 16.
Hear that, Brian? Brian
Wait.
loved the Shed.
Oh yeah.
Oh, of course.
Well,
was
I
all
was just
things
thinking,
Shed.
tasting the white Pinot after tasting the 09 Chardonnay. The Brian is so sad he's not here on this.
I mean, that
this show.
white
When-
Pinot is like,
Well, the way it's like combines like the acidity and structure of white wine with like also being a juicy
right,
Pinot Noir
at 11.4.
at 11 point. And I had to look for it too. You had to look for a second to find it on there, but to look for the ABV to like what you pick that at and how you make it to have that combination of juiciness and
Well, and Sam, you missed the Pinot Gris. The Pinot Gris has this like
I'll move backwards. I'll go sideways. I don't care.
this juiciness also, like kind of common thread, I guess, but different flavor profiles. Like this is like tropical fruit, like almost like a gum, right?
You're pointing at the Pinot Gris?
The Pinot Gris.
Yeah.
No, the white Pinot is white wine with red fruit.
Yeah.
It's fucking wild. It's like, what the- it's like one of those, you'd eat the bean that makes everything taste weird, like one of those like mind fuckers. I dig it.
So Bart, I explained to Bart that I don't like to talk about my own wines. I like other people's mouths to talk about them. And I'm not much of a talker about wine making, but I will talk about this one,
Okay.
the white wines. So I think, as I said, we got this crazy finest ever in the New World from Parker in 2006 about our Pinot Gris. And I thought, oh, I must have figured something out. And every time you figure something out, at least in my world, it's because you made a mistake. And so, or somebody did, right?
That might be. Is that the first guest spoken T-shirt line?
Right.
Every time you figure something out, it's because you made a mistake. 100%.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh
That's
my
the
God,
only
that's
way you
that's so
learn.
brilliant.
Yeah, you learn from your mistakes.
You don't really learn from all this.
Nobody's ever
success.
said that, but you learn from your mistakes. I did say the first one. So anyway, in 2006, Michel Salg, who was my mentor in winemaking, he was the founding winemaker of Rotorua, invented the L'Hermitage Rotorua estate in Anderson Valley, which is by far the largest producer in Anderson Valley. He did the L'Hermitage, highest rated sparkling wine producer in the United States, probably still. And I had known him when I was trying to get Rotorua to give me a pre-plant contract, which they did not. But he was kind and he was a wonderful human being. And he had retired from Rotorua, and he had invented a press. And Mary Elke told me, you should call Michelle because he invented a red wine press and you're planning on making red wines. And so I called Michelle. And Michelle came over to my house and sat in my living room and talked to me about his press. But he basically convinced me that the way to make Pinot Noir is to be, and I would butcher his French accent, but is to be gentle. And the press that he invented was gentle, and it's still sitting actually on 8th Street here. We sold it with the winery. We bought the press number 1.
Oh, is it the one at
the Cocard?
the Cocard at
the little
Donham?
one. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
You see it in the window,
yeah, they call it the
when you
bucket
drive
press. And I was the first and only customer that year. And he said, I will help you make the wine. And so he was on the pad every single day of harvest, and taking notes and taking measurements and all this on what we did with that press. But he offered to make sparkling with me. And in 2005, we got our permit to build the building a week before harvest. So it was a little late to make sparkling. But in 2006, we pulled a ton of Pinot Gris from Wiley Vineyard, which is at the very end of the valley toward the coast. So cold.
Shout out Cody Rasmussen, Desire Lines makes a Riesling from Wiley Vineyard.
Wiley, yeah.
Lucky them.
Yeah.
So we got Wiley for the first time in 2006. Brad is one of the other founders of the Valley, and Michelle had worked together for a long time, knew each other very well. And so we did this 1-ton experiment of sparkling Pinot Gris. So we pulled that ton, and there were 5 tons left on the vine. And 2006 was a really wet year in the spring, and I mean really wet, like 29 days out of 31 in March were raining. And then it was a wildly hot October. So it took forever to ripen. We called the pick toward the end of October. Said let's say on Saturday, we'd take it on Monday. And the guy who was farming the vineyard said, hey, Brad had a farming company do it. He said, right. Because they would pick, as first the stuff that was ripest as the valley went along, and there's a limited number of pickers. We got that fruit in on Friday, and it was a very hot week. And so we were looking at Pinot Gris at way above 26. I'm guessing it was closer to 27 bricks. Was going to make a 16% alcohol wine. We didn't used to, I'm going to say we still don't, but we didn't used to water back our Pinot Gris. We would routinely pick at the time. I don't think this was done more recently, but at the time, Breggo would routinely pick Pinot Noir, what I would call hot, and water back and acidify. And that was kind of the way that it was done back then by many. But we got the Pinot Gris in super hot, and we fermented it, and it went almost dry. Didn't quite get dry. And I thought, well, I have this 1 ton of 11% alcohol, screaming acid wine sitting over here. What's going to happen if I blend these two? And I started blending them. And the more I put in of the nice high acid wine, the better that Pinot Gris got. And that Pinot Gris ended up being sub 15, but high acid with that sparkling base wine, right? We never did it that way again when I made wine for Breggo. We picked it, less ripe. We always had residual sugar on the Pinot Gris because we thought it was bitter without. That's a whole other story. But so when I left Cliff Lady, after I spent a year there in the transition, I was calling Oregon to find out if there was any Pinot Gris at 19 bricks in mid-October. And I found a vineyard, and I flew up there 2 days later, and I pulled 3 tons and made that sparkling Pinot Gris with Michelle, which
you hadn't made it because you blended it all.
Never made a sparkling, yeah. So Michelle helped me make that wine, and he helped me make my first vintage, really, and second vintage of our Lichen Estate sparkling wines.
Oh.
And rest his soul. I think I now I've had to say that twice. 2 different people.
Yeah.
But he so he helped me with the sparkling, but I had this question of, well, what would be the ratio that I would like today? Because my personal tastes had changed. My personal taste has gone to less ripe fruit, higher acid wines, and less alcohol. So what would be my personal blend if I took a sparkling wine base wine, which you pick at, let's call it 19 bricks, and blended it with a riper 23 bricks.
Right. Finished wine.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the answer was what we called Le Pinot Noir and Gris. It was 80% sparkling base wine, 20% riper fruit. It was an 11% finished wine because we left a little residual sugar on it,
It would be a fun kind of thing to play around with every year.
which we do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the white Pinot this year, the 11.4, is the closest white Pinot we've made to the Le Pinot. We've stopped making Le Pinot because it was kind of the middle brother, and it stopped. People either wanted the white Pinot or the Pinot Gris. But our average, I would say, is about 12.5%. It's about 50-50 in terms of sparkling base wine and still wine. So you get that screaming acidity, natural acidity. We are able to keep some residual sugar on when we pick the riper fruit. We stop it on purpose. We chill it down. We SO2 it. And I want to say that's our quote unquote formula, but we use many, many different parts of those blends. And that's the most fun wine to make.
Yeah.
In terms of winemaking and blending.
Yeah. I mean, both these two wines are in their own way, like super delicious. But Sam, you nailed it. Like aromatics of white wine, but with red fruit.
Red fruit on the palate.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we are able to do that in part because we have a large sparkling program. Like sparkling is now the heart. What I think of as the heart of why we're here. And I don't think I've tasted that. Thank you. Is that the white Pinot?
This is the white Pinot.
Yeah, thanks.
I'm tasting it again.
Yeah, worthy. So because we have this large sparkling program, we fraction those wines, and we use a portion of what we call the Cru de Cuvée in this, and then a larger portion of the Thai, all of the Thai, both of which are high acid, but the Thai is not quite as high acid as our 2.9 pH Cru.
Sort of in general for Anderson Valley these days, and I guess Rotorua probably throws this off a little bit, but of the whole region, how much is going into sparkling wine and how much is still wine? Being you're the president of the association now, you gotta
So
rattle these numbers.
I'm going to defer to other people who describe that. We have been the one winery dedicated to making sparkling, kind of really high-end sparkling, since we started. So in 2012, I do know that there are other wineries that have let's call it entered the fray, but because it takes 4 or 5 years to make a good sparkling, some of those wines are just coming to market.
Right.
Breggo made some sparkling Savoy, and it's awesome. It was 5 years on Entourage. I tasted it a year ago. I just thought it was awesome. We've got some Savoy Entourage from 2021, so that won't come out for another couple of years, that we purchased from them. So there are lots of little mini projects.
Should I grab the sparkling?
Sure, it's open. Yeah, thank you. But
I really miss Brian when there's no Psalm.
Absolutely. There you go. Well, that is a skill that Brian has.
Well, he just like a knowing of the moment and the time and when to get that feel for it.
Mr. Entertainment.
Right.
I mean,
wait, is he usually the one who gets the wines?
he's born
like
to do it. Yeah.
I mean, and I don't know. He'll listen to this. Hopefully, it's maybe it's just like an anxious thing of working in restaurants for as long as he has, of just like wanting to be in charge of the wine service, and kind of just like
what's next,
and just like takes it. It just like it's muscle memory and second nature at this point to be like, all right, when am I pouring the next wine? We miss you, Brian. Hopefully you're enjoying a good day off.
Right.
So Bart just brought out the only sparkling I brought, but back to the mistakes. Sometimes the mistakes aren't ours, and sometimes they're great mistakes anyway. We were
Think about that for a while.
We were warehousing offsite. And
you fucked up. Oh,
if you know what a tirage bin is, if you've ever been outside a sparkling wine making house like Jay in Healdsburg, I'm sure in Stromsburg you would have found the same thing back in the day. There are all these wooden bins stacked 5 high, and those are called tirage bins, and that's where you store your sparkling wine after you do the tirage bottling, which is the first bottling where you're putting in the yeast and the sugar that then re-ferments in the bottle and creates all the bubbles. when you look at a warehouse full of tirage bins, it's quite easy to lose some. Even if you're a warehouse company.
Right, because every box looks the same.
Every box looks the same.
And
You've got this little piece
and
of
they're
paper on
all
the side.
right, and they're all on no labels on the bottles, right?
Well, ours are.
Oh yeah, yours are.
Ours are screen
We'll have
printed
to talk about
labels.
that commitment sometime.
Yeah, insanity.
Yeah.
Committed to a sane asylum. Yeah. So this is we disgorged most of this after, let me think, 60 months. Most of this lot. So this would have been about a 5-bin lot, and I felt like, God, we sold out through so quickly. And then lo and behold, a couple years later, we found more. And so this one has maybe it
It's
was
so
a year later.
reassuring.
I'm glad no compliance people listen to this.
But it's also so reassuring to hear of other people making those kinds of fuck ups, you know?
Yeah.
Wait, we never make mistakes.
No, never.
So anyway, this is a late disgorged. There are 36 cases worth of wine in each tirage bin. This is a late disgorged bin, the lost bin. Yeah, so to be fair, when you do late disgorge, it gets longer time on the lees. It gives you more of that, what you think of as the champagne character. So
I mean, the mouth, what it did, I think for this wine is just like that mid palate and mouth feel on it is just like over the, I mean.
Okay. So now I have a question, Doug. So how many cases total of this 2015 sparkling did you do?
35.
So it was just one bin that
No. We made,
right.
I think, 5 bins. So we disgorged 144,
Right.
maybe 6 bins. I think we disgorged close to 200 cases, and it was so popular. Just the first round, because it was spectacular. It's our first sparkling rosé. We'd always done clear. What do you call it? Like Blanc de Noir and Blanc de Gris were our.
So I guess where I'm going with this is this. You have these beautiful silk screen printed labeled bottles that have a vintage date. Did you end up at the end and you said, holy shit, we got a bunch of extra glass? Or did you have to have extra glass printed?
No, it's already in those
when you
bottles.
found it?
No,
it's already in the bottles.
Yeah, it's entourage.
Right, it's already it's in those bottles.
As my daughter would say, as a little kid, she would say, it was hiding.
It's so funny that, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So now do you
Sell it?
No. I mean, yes, obviously. But do you
Hopefully.
did this beautiful mistake become the way of like you're hiding one?
We are now.
You are hiding one.
Yeah, beautiful
Taking-
mistakes. Yeah, no, and everybody, we did not invent late disgorge.
No, but when it clearly works as well as it does with this.
Yeah, the
You wanna
painful
do
thing
more
about
of it,
sparkling wine
right?
making
How? Yeah.
is how much it costs to just sit on. It's not just that this is fruit that if you're trying to buy fruit from my vineyard or Farrington Vineyard or Savoy Vineyard or any great vineyard in Anderson Valley, you're kind of the low bar is $5,000 a ton at this point. So you're talking about putting away something that is of value immediately if you're a farmer. And I up until 2020, I sold quite a bit of fruit.
Right.
And so that's great for cash flow. Sparkling wine, when let's say you make it in 2015,
Is the opposite of cash flow.
and you start selling it in 2024, that's kind of a 9-year spread.
Yeah.
And then for most of that time, it sits in a bottle that last year I was paying over $2 a bottle for the glass because of it's come down a little bit. I was paying $1 a bottle initially in 2012 versus $6. I'm sorry, 60 cents or less, 50 cents a bottle for a good Burgundy glass from Savor.
Right.
Without the packaging.
Right.
Meaning without the box.
Correct.
So glass costs twice as much. Then we screen print it, which adds another $1 a bottle. And then we sit on it for 5 to 7 years.
Yeah.
That's stupid.
No, it's
Normal.
bad math. It's bad math. No, I understand. There's like, especially with sparkling wine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and so there's
How
a reason.
long the lead time is.
So
you know,
I am not going to name names,
capitalized
but
expenses.
there are lots of companies that are buying sparkling wine that was made by a very large producer in Healdsburg. And I have all kinds of respect for them. They employ great people, but they're buying it for their tasting room to say we have a sparkling wine.
Right. It's custom crush.
And it's not aged.
Right.
So the way that you make great sparkling, in addition to picking it right, getting it from the right vineyard, getting it from the right region, you have to age it, and that's brutal.
And it's that pre-disgorge aging,
right,
that
that makes it so special.
Right.
It's like that sparkling that Steve Law gave you.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I learned very much from Michelle is aging under cork also matters. So if you try one of our sparklings after a month or two, like when I think about white wines, for example, all the white wines you tasted today, those wines are usually through what I would call bottle shock within 4 or 5 weeks. Sparkling wine, because you're adding sugar upon disgorging, the marrying of that sugar with the wine, you literally have to shake the bottle after because the sugar wants to settle on the bottom. Right. But you shake the bottle, it takes 6 months. And so we're not selling, we've bottled, we've rebottled right. in the disgorging, and it takes 6 more months to release it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I've heard countless really smart people talk about how it makes no sense, and I completely agree with them.
and yet here we are.
And yet you still want to do it.
I'm the dumb kid.
No, I'm
Sparkling
good.
Shannon?
I'm good.
Sparkling Shannon?
I'm good.
So are you really putting people's names on the fence posts? It does say so.
End posts.
End posts. There you go.
Yeah. So we threw a party. So we have a meter by meter vineyard, 4,000 vines the acre. And we put...
Would you do that again?
Of course.
Okay.
We can talk about that. I'd love to talk about that. I love talking about farming. I don't like talking about winemaking and...
That's all right. Go for it.
So the end posts, I kind of insisted be redwood for at least for the initial vineyard. Was that a mistake? Probably.
Is that aesthetics or just...
It's both aesthetic. I wasn't going to use pressure. I've been in organic food for 30 years. I'm a fanatic kind of.
No pressure treated lumber.
No pressure treated lumber. Yeah.
No.
Don't put arsenic on purpose in your vineyard.
No.
Just as a matter of,
and don't burn it in your fireplace either.
Yes.
No.
And there is an aesthetic element of
no
redwood
campfires
end posts, right? And so,
and plus it's like native.
It is native.
Right?
We are the heart of
it's
yeah.
regenerative.
You're putting it right back where it came as it decomposes into the ground. Right.
Slowly. Yeah. No, most of our posts are still there, and that's we're now. What is it? 08. 20. It's 16 years at least.
Yeah.
So yes, we have redwood end posts, and I had the brilliant idea of throwing a club pickup party where all of our club members could bring their own tools and carve their names and any kind of art they wanted into our redwood end posts. And so being in Anderson Valley, doing a pickup party from our club, 9 people showed up because it's a
Out
long...
of how many?
Oh, it was probably 250 at the time.
Okay. Right.
Yeah, so it's hard to throw a club party in Anderson Valley. When I first announced that we're going to throw a club party at our house in Healdsburg, which I think was probably 2019, we had 35 people say, I'm in. And like, we never did that in Boonville because of the drive. And you have to stay there.
Provide transportation.
Yeah, no, if we could helicopter people in, everybody would come.
And the Cloverdale to Boonville tram.
Yeah.
Maybe like aerial gondola.
No, it's a
something.
commitment. So Anderson Valley is a commitment. Most people who taste wines at our tasting rooms are going to the Mendocino coast. It's a 3-hour drive. They're staying for 2 nights. They're spending $1,000 just on lodging. It's a commitment. It's their weekend of the year. So anyway, we didn't get a big crowd. My friend Cameron brought a lot of tools, and his daughters went to town, so I think they had 2 or 3 posts. But yeah, we don't have a whole lot of carved posts.
It's going to be a cool collection once you're done with that.
Oh,
I mean, keep it
going.
on, man.
We haven't ever thought of that. So
oh yeah, it's going to be neat.
now I'm announcing anybody in our club and anybody who wants to join our club, which is everybody.
Come on out.
Yeah.
And where would they do that?
Yes,
Get a-
exactly.
Plug the website.
Plug
How
the
do we-
website.
How do we visit? How do we join the club?
Right. Okay. All 4 clubs. So we just bought our new winery, old winery back. So we just created a new website for both. It's lichenestate.com and it's breggo.com. And then if you hit the website, you're going to find a lichen, lichenologists.
And that's LICHENNBRE.
GGO.
GGO.
Yes. And then we've got the Black Sheep Club, which gives you an extra 5% savings and gets you a double. So you get the Lichen and the Breggo Club at the same time.
Well, and you knew the Bialys, and they've got the Black Chicken Club, so
Yeah.
it's a good thing.
Almost the same thing. The Breggo Club has always been the flock. So that's we're riffing on.
Because you're right. He mentioned the Ollies. That's perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And then our last of the 4 clubs is our librarians, where we're going to spelunk the library on every shipment.
Since you got it back.
Yeah, both. So we have a pretty sizable library from Lichen starting in 2012 and intentionally, and we did the same thing with Breggo. So the Lichen, the librarians will get a bottle or 2 from the library until we run out.
I love those club names, by the way.
Thank you.
The lichenologist.
Right.
I think my wife might want to become a lichenologist just for the name.
I mean,
And the labels are the labels are
If you can tell me her name and give me your credit card,
exactly.
I got no problem with that.
Well, and lichen is something that's cool too. I mean, it's living, and if you ever had a train set or knew anybody who did when you were a kid, they had lichen all over the place.
Totally.
Just because that's what you covered your stuff with, lichen. Cool.
It's so for me, it's one of the most beautiful life forms on Earth. It is the most extant life form on Earth, meaning it covers more of the planet than any other life form.
Extent. There's a good SAT word for you right there.
There you go. You find it in.
SATs aren't relevant anymore.
Ouch. Hey,
Can I tell that? Can I tell the story? I am going to tell.
Tell
the story.
whatever story you want.
Okay, so
Your show, man.
I want to talk about my kids, and one reason is one of my kids is coming to the town of Sonoma to perform on March 13th. I think it's at 6 or 7 o'clock. I should have checked with Jeff. At the Sebastiani Theater. So she is at Yale. She has got pipes, and she tried out for a cappella, and the oldest a cappella underclassmen group in the country is called the Spizwinks, and they were all male until last year, and she became the first female tapped. They're really good. They're world famous. They
What
do
do
these
they
world
sing?
tours. They sing all kinds of stuff.
This is Pitch Perfect, right?
Yes,
Right.
yes, very much.
Like
a cappella.
Acapella, collegiate acapella. It's competitive at some point, right? Quite competitive.
I'm sure.
Yes.
It's not. They're not just rocking
Although
out
you know,
for the love of the
I
music.
will say
They're
this
trying
is
to.
cool. So one of the competitions, like Berkeley and Stanford big game, is Harvard Yale, and during the Harvard Yale game, the Harvard's version of the Spizwinks, which is their name, houses.
Sounds like a Harvard.
No,
No.
You've never seen. Go home and find on whatever
Netflix.
internet streaming Netflix. Especially the first one. They get but
and Glee.
Glee, but Pitch Perfect. You'll laugh, you'll sing along. It's fantastic.
And these kids, their promise, the promise that the Spizwinks gives them is that once in your 3 years of underclassmen career with us, you will get to go to your hometown. In our case, it's Sonoma County, so we live in Healdsburg. But Jeff Bunchu is coordinating the Sebastiani Theater thing here on August 13th. There's going to all and I don't have the date.
That's right. We'll put it in the.
Yeah, we'll get the
put it in
show
the
notes.
information.
Okay, I think
Because
it's
on top of wanting to go be a lichenologist, my wife is probably also going to want to go to the acapella show.
Right.
You can hand me her card for that too.
Your daughter's perfect for that. Right
Oh
now.
shoot! Yeah, oh my god!
Yeah, but anyways, they like I guess I'm stuck at that. They stay with each other. It's both competitive, but her crowd friends she's also been tapped for like the salsa club. So she sings for the salsa club. She sings for yeah. She's a singer and a songwriter and a.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's awesome. And your son is currently doing something pretty cool. Also, you said recently.
Also, yeah. So he didn't want to stay in high school.
I mean,
No. So he
keep him away from my kid.
yeah. So he had a pretty rough go. Meaning, he was ill. He got ill during COVID and missed a year. And he didn't have a good time when he came back. And he says, I want to be out of here. And so he finished high school. He missed his sophomore year and he finished 3 years of high school in a year and a half. Graduated right after Christmas, went to Ecuador, which is where my wife is from and my kids are dual citizens. Stayed there for a month, but he is now hitchhiking around South America right at the moment in Patagonia as a 17-year-old. So
It's awesome.
are we worried?
No, it's given him freedom that he'll appreciate his
Does he
entire
look more like
life.
your wife or you?
He's handsome. So my wife is the answer. Bart knows what my wife looks like.
Yeah. I mean,
My wife is gorgeous. I can brag about that, can't
yes.
I?
Yeah, of course. He looks like he would look like a local down there, I would think.
He talks like a local now.
Right. Yeah. He's not a white kid from Sonoma.
No, it's interesting. So my daughter always wanted to learn. She never lost her Spanish. My kids both were bilingual at the age of 2. But my son, for some reason, and maybe it's a boy thing, just didn't want to keep it. And so but it was last year, he was like, I want to get back in touch with my roots. I want to learn Spanish again. And he's bilingual. Yeah.
well, hitchhiking around South America will
We'll do that for
probably make your Spanish come back real quick.
Right.
you. Yeah. So
You
he
remember
hiked
how to
his
say
first-
I'm hungry really quickly.
Yeah.
hiked his first
Tengo hambre.
volcano
I got
in
that.
Patagonia yesterday.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
You want to run through the 2 Pinots?
Sure.
At least inspiration or something special about them or your feelings or grape growing.
Let's see. So
How are we doing on time?
1:30.
Yeah.
We haven't poured Pinot yet.
I snuck a glass. I saw Bart.
I would
pour a
start with the
little, so I
Moonglow.
did.
Yeah.
So we have 3 Pinots that we make every year. One we call Moonglow, named after an actual lichen. The Moonglow lichen, Anderson Valley is the northernmost part of its range, and it goes all the way to Sonora Desert. And the image on the actual bottle is that lichen.
Who knew that there were so many lichens in the world?
Oh, it's gazillions. The names of them are so cool. When I told my distributor, Sybil AJ of Springboard, that I was thinking about naming a wine Moonglow, she was like, "You're so fucking hippie, Mendocino County." And it worked. People like it. So then we do the Solera volume now 10 or 11, and then our estate Pinot we just call Pinot Noir. And that is our barrel select. So we usually do about 8 to 10 barrels of the estate, depending on. We always do 8 barrels of the of the Solera, and then our largest blend is the Moonglow.
So there is indeed a difference in the illustration on the bottle.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, on all the bottles.
Yeah.
Yes.
All the different lichens. Amazing. How cool. Who knew?
All right. Tell me about this one.
Let me taste.
Earthy, spicy, crunchy.
Yeah, when I first tasted it, I didn't notice the crunchiness. It was real round and smooth.
But it's got a little like
Oh no, there's some
it's got-
lichen.
But
yeah, it's got
but
some.
it has acid for sure.
It sure does.
Is
yeah.
that what crunchy means?
one of the
Yeah.
one of the ways that crunchiness can happen.
I
B,
like
acidity
edges.
can happen, right?
I like edges. I don't want
Yeah.
something that's so round
Yeah.
it's flabby and
But yeah,
Is
it's
there-
definitely.
But not that Pinot Noir is necessarily like always a tannic.
So I will talk about
Well, I mean,
tannin.
there's tannin in
but there's
this wine.
definitely tannin in
Yeah,
it.
so we have a group of winemakers. It's usually 20 to 30 who make wine from Anderson Valley Pinot, and we get together kind of regularly, certainly once a year, and we try each other's wines in barrel. Usually after May, previous vintage was May, so after May, so they're resolved mostly, And one of the things that I learned about my own vineyard, or two of the things I learned about my winemaking and vineyard, one of them is I make my winemaking on the crush pad is reductive. And so we get all kinds of tropical flavors and aromatics when our wines are really young. Those resolve, but because of carbonic fermentation, our destemmer is very gentle. Our fruit looks like a grenade. Pinot Noir is called Pinot because it looks like a pine cone. And so we have carbonic fermentation, which means that the fermentation
Did
starts.
you know that?
Pinot is
The pine cone
I
thing?
did, yeah.
I knew it too.
Yeah, who knew? So
You're younger, Sam. It's okay if you don't.
So no,
I didn't know they taught that.
I think everybody should just. You're allowed to not know stuff.
Thanks.
I'm
I'm good at that.
It's okay. I make mistakes. So anyway,
Beautiful mistake.
carbonic fermentation is the norm in my winery, and I never really thought about it. And I try never to taste.
Carbonic meaning you don't put it through a destemmer. You just
No, we destem it, but
stem it, but
our-
whole berries.
yeah. So our vineyard is literally 100 yards from our winery.
Right.
We handpick.
Right.
We don't have a tractor.
I was going to say, well, you have meter by meter.
Yeah. So you walk them out, and you gently dump them, and then those get onto they're dumped on a trailer with the bins in them, and the next
Just in like FYBs or into Mac.
no
ones.
in skinny bins actually, quarter-ton bins,
Oh, quarter ton bins. Yeah.
and then they go to our destemmer, and I would say we destem probably 90% of the fruit,
Okay.
but it doesn't start when you
Right. It's whole berry. It's all whole berry.
when we destem it. You're looking at the bucket that's holding that destemmed fruit, and you don't see juice.
Yeah.
And so it takes days for us to get enough juice to do a punch down. What we're doing in the first 2 or 3 days, once a day, is a pump over just to wet the cap, or to wet the grapes because we don't want it to rot, and we're doing a cold soak. But yeah, so that's one thing I've learned.
How many days do you keep it cold? How many days do you actively work on keeping it cold?
So Anderson Valley's cold
Right.
at night. And so what we do is we'll move the cold soaks out at night and back in the day, and we
Yep.
keep the winery cold.
Yep.
5 to 7.
Okay. And then just let them start waking up or warming up naturally on their own. Or do
Yeah.
you-
So I would say that
inside
the
it?
majority, and okay, now I'm afraid because I listened to your last podcast.
Oops.
The
I
majority.
don't remember it.
Don't do
so
that.
Don't worry.
The vast majority of our Pinot Noir we let go native.
Right.
Not true with our sparkling ever. Other people's sparkling, we do some custom crush. We've let go native, but
Is that just the you're threading too small of a needle hole on a sparkling fermentation to want to let it go native?
that's because Michelle told me to always not do it.
Because the French guy said so.
Yeah, the French guy
No,
said so.
totally. I have there's a whole
Well,
list of
and-
things.
And he had a good explanation,
Yeah.
but yeah, the French guy said
The
so.
French guy said so.
Ricky,
Totally.
question here. Can you make sparkling from any wine? I mean, any varietal?
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you make it well?
That was my second.
No, so I
know a
would
guy
I
that
would
makes
encourage you to
sparkling
try the
Cabernet.
red sparkling
What part?
Shiraz from Australia. I'm going to stop there.
Yeah. I mean,
All right.
well,
Under
shoot,
the
our
Wire
friend.
makes great sparkling Zinfandel
Yeah.
from the Bedrock Vineyard.
I
It
mean,
made Joel Peterson crazy when they picked it at 18 bricks or something.
Well, so interestingly,
when our friend Mike Cox was with Shug, they used to do that sparkling Pinot Noir.
we make sparkling Pinot Noir.
Yeah, but
In
no,
like-
but it
but
was
like
a red
red-
wine. But it was
Oh,
red.
like
gotcha.
like lamb. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so they fermented on skins?
I don't remember.
Okay.
Mike?
So the way we make our rosé is we're adding still Pinot Noir.
Yeah.
We're adding
Like
the
for
color.
color.
Yes, we do not. Michelle again.
Well, that's a very traditional,
yes.
right?
Yeah. Michelle said, if there's color when you're pressing, you've made a mistake.
No, you're pressing too
I
hard.
don't want to try to. His accent is really good in French. But yeah, no, he was adamant that gentle pressing, you will not get color from Pinot Noir, and he's right. We've never had color in our sparkling.
Jasmine has some tasting to do down there. Now.
Jasmine's got work to do.
She's on the catch up.
That's a good thing.
All right, let's taste the other Pinot.
So this is the estate, and we barrel select. It has historically gotten more time in barrel and more time in bottle. So
Grazie.
let me think about this. Our 2020, we're at the end of our 2020, and we're in 2024. We sold out of our. We thought we sold out of our Moonglow 2020, which is on the table, last summer, I think. So typically, our Moonglow is a half a year to a year behind our estate in terms of release cycles. Yeah.
So Doug, have you what's been the biggest thing that's come out of bringing back Breggo, and or what is it? You know, what are you most feared of, and what are you most excited about? Or I mean,
Yeah. No. So we opened our tasting room.
I mean, you're an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
right?
So we opened our tasting room on February 2nd. We got our permit to open that tasting room on February 1st. And I was able to sleep the night of February 2nd. But the surprising thing about the whole Breggo purchase was I thought, okay, I've done this before. I'm getting it back. This should be easy. And it was a full tilt startup. And I think I counted it up. I think that's my 7th. And it was a bitch. Like all of the permitting. So from TTB to ABC to Mendocino County to now we have a commercial kitchen and we're waiting to get inspected. It all had to happen in a timely fashion. The label, the wine arriving from Fell in the middle of harvest.
Because all that was any bottled product would have been soaked off and relabeled.
No. We got bulk.
So you went from bulk.
We purchased bulk.
from bulk going forward.
Yeah. So we got their Chardonnay, 3 Chardonnays, Savoy Farrington, and their what we blended as Anderson Valley as bulk wine, and then had to bottle it. And normally I'm not bottling from November 1st through the end of December.
Right.
That's like when my employees go home or go to Mexico. Literally, that's when oftentimes. We were just at it. And then our labels arrived on the 15th. We started labeling. So it's been a grind.
Hit the ground running.
And we added.
Here's something that's very familiar to you, but not familiar at all.
Right.
Like, go.
It almost would have been almost harder than starting a new brand. So like restart.
Well, and I tapped the person who did the original label and said, I love the original label. It had been abandoned in 2014. Should we do the same? Should we update? And we decided to do an update. But we literally, the art that's on the bottle, you can see it from this. The art that's on this, I'm pointing to a 2009 bottle and then a
for our listeners
22 bottle.
Yeah.
The original Breggo had a sheep. It was a bighorn ram looking ass backwards, meaning you see his ass and you see him looking backwards at you. And we used the original art, but we changed the dimensions and whatnot.
And the shading and the font.
Well, this was not our original. So this is
okay.
Cliff redid it. Okay. So all of it. So the design took the same amount of time. All the decisions are new.
It's all about that permit.
And it's a lot of permitting. Wine is a lot of permitting.
Speaking of, Bart, did you?
So just before we started, I got a phone call from. I'll give a shout out to Andre Anderson, who's helped me get through this, and my license is being issued tonight, so I can theoretically open tomorrow.
Open the tasting room.
There we go. Open the tasting room.
So we got our license on the afternoon of February 1st.
Yeah.
Bart and I talked about this before we started, and we opened on the 2nd. We were still painting the room on February 1st.
Yeah, I've been done painting for a couple weeks.
And my neighbor from Healdsburg, Martha, who had not been a tasting room designer before, but she was like an interior designer. She has a warehouse full of furniture and cool stuff in Healdsburg, and my wife knew about it and had seen it, had been in it. And she was like, you should tap Martha. You should get Martha to do the design. She just went to town, and we have this beautiful interior design tasting room in my favorite building in Anderson Valley, which is what Phillips Hill used to be in. And now, like in our original tasting room on our property, looks like scraps.
It's a very cool looking place from your website.
Project.
Another project. Right. Which I obviously can afford.
Right. Well, you're a winery owner.
Yes.
Actually, you own several wineries.
It sounds stupid at this point. Yeah. Don't tell my bank.
It sounds like I need a ride in your private jet.
Makes it a much easier ride to Anderson
for the
Valley.
record, everybody's
And
joking.
do they have an airport up there?
Yeah. We have a cool airport. We do. We have a 3,000 foot long. So back in the 70s and 80s, everybody who went through Boonville High became a pilot, because that was like, there was a class on flying where you could become a pilot at 16. And like, that was a thing. But we have this beautiful, sound like Trump, beautiful 3,000 foot airport.
It's a beautiful runway.
Best runway.
Best runway ever.
The longest runway.
No, so
in it.
the bad thing about it is you have to fly over the hills and then dive down to get to that runway.
That'll give you
But
experience.
yeah, once you get there. Jeff actually, we've talked about this before, but Jeff Bunchu was planning on flying to our place. I don't remember what year it was, but it was the last day he flew. He took his plane out from whatever that airport is off of
The little one.
yeah,
Sky Park.
and as he was closing that giant metal door, he smashed his thumb and like almost took it off. And he called me and was like, "I'm not coming up." And he sounded like he was going to pass out. And so I don't think he's flown ever since.
Well,
Yeah, I flew with Jeff once. He took me out. We had a great flight, but at one point we were flying over Bodega Head, and I could smell what was definitely like oil hitting the manifold, like that, burned oil sensation. And he looks over at me, he goes, "Do you smell that?" I go, "Yeah, I smell that." He goes, "I think we'll fly over land the rest of the way back."
I don't know. What was that guy, Sully?
Right.
Jeff Sullyberger?
I think a Cessna's different.
Landed in Bodega Bay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I flew with Jeff. It was great.
So I'll just start chatting. Planting a vineyard.
Yes.
There are lots of decisions. But my major in college was history, not enology and viticulture. And so I am in a place where we grow cold climate varietals really, really well. And so I look to kind of the North Star of where they grow them, and historically the best, which would be Champagne, Burgundy, and all of the Grand Cru Champagne and Burgundy by law, after 700 years of farming, are meter by meter.
Right.
And so I thought, there must be a reason they made those decisions. And if you talk to them about it, and if you read up about it, there are just a myriad number of reasons that they think that works really well. One is the how the root systems work, meaning you've got an equal distance between vines in all directions, and so the root systems reach out until they reach the next vine, and then they stop and they mine that soil that's underneath them. The vine to vine shading is optimal. It's 1-to-1, meaning if you have a 40, let's use inches, a 40-inch canopy and a 40-inch distance between the canopy, the fruit doesn't get direct sunlight for very much of the time. And if you again, the last podcast, if you let the leaves stay there, it doesn't get sun at all. And then especially if you're orienting it, I want to say 17 degrees off of zero, you've got this optimal vine to vine shading. You've got this optimal root system. Your vine doesn't have to do as much work. And so in our case, if you look across the highway, it's an 8x5 planting. So 1,089 vines to the acre. Those vines are on soil that's 5 feet deep with cobbles underneath. So have massive amounts of water and nutrients that they have access to. Our vines are on a pretty steep hill. It's between 15 and 35% slopes.
Wow.
So, and then an 11 cubic foot, get this right, 20. I figure our vines have 22 cubic feet each if they go to where there's a hard pan. Across the street, it's 200 cubic feet. So we have about a 1/10 the amount of soil to mine as that vineyard right across the street. And that naturally balances the vine. And so we don't do a lot of hedging because we don't need to. We do get good growth on most of the vineyard. The part that's actually 35% slope and pretty heavy in clay, not the best. Not great yields there, but for most of the vineyard, when we have enough water, it's good yields and it's great quality.
I mean, it's all about balance, right, Sam? I mean, if your vines are in balance,
Right.
how you farm it is, well, I was going to say secondary, but I guess it's really not. I guess it's about farming it correctly so that it is in balance.
Right.
Well, most likely, and I'm gonna make a conjecture that yield-wise, it's probably pretty similar to somebody who's on a much bigger spacing with much less vines. You're not maybe a little lower, but instead of 10 vines making, just for the sake of numbers, a ton of grapes, if you have 100 vines making a ton of grapes, it's a different individual vine making a small, producing a smaller amount of fruit, putting its entire energy into, a smaller yield and getting better flavor.
The answer is more hybrid
concentration, right?
So the answer is more hybrid than that. So the way we would ask, and still do, our farmers to farm for Breggo is a shoot that has 40 inches, 14 leaves.
Good.
Leave 2 clusters on it. It's going to throw a third cluster all the time.
Drop.
Pull that off. If that shoot is only 18 inches and has, let's say, 7, 8, 10,
Good.
that gets 1 cluster. If it's below 18 inches, just drop it. Drop everything. We farm in January for that, meaning if we think a vine can't give enough shoots to do 2, we do cane pruning. To do 2 canes, that one only gets 1 cane, right? But the way the math works on the 8x5 vineyard is the highest quality growers are going to be averaging about 1 pound per linear foot of wire. So your canopy is your solar array, and your canopy captures all that sunlight, and you don't want a 15-foot bull cane feeding 2 clusters of fruit.
Right.
So you hedge it, but your canopy is what it is, right? It's not going to be 6 or 10 feet tall.
Right.
It's going to feed those 2 clusters. Our canopy is essentially the same. It's just we have more vines in between,
Right.
and we have less space in between the vines, meaning less space between rows
Right.
and more vines in the row. So my standard is still 1 pound per linear foot of wire. We just have 2.5 times more wire.
So say you have more wires, more wire.
Way more wire. 2.4 times, I think it is. So if whatever 8 divided by 3.33 is, right? So
Yeah.
so
Divide that,
I'm
Chad.
going to use 2.4. And so
Yeah,
if we
it's
get
about 2.4.
6 tons per acre of insane high quality fruit, I'm thrilled.
Right.
And we did this year.
And if you guys are hearing our next door neighbor here, he is quietly and organically rebuilding his house. So that's
Is that next door or 2 has that? I don't know where it is.
well, somebody's working with.
There's always, it seems like,
power
a sort
tools
of
today.
rotating, that this house is occupied, unoccupied, new people living there. They work on it, they leave. It's better when they're doing construction than when they're doing tree work out there, though. For as far as podcasting goes,
Which is
we've
very
tried
important.
both. We've done it both.
We're just going to edit out that part.
Yeah, sure.
Hey.
That was the best part of the show right there. Too.
On the other
No,
hand,
only this background. We'll make sure Doug.
Oh yeah, totally. We have the capability
I'm not better than a chainsaw.
and we have blue skies.
on that side of it.
Yeah, it's turned a little bit.
It's February.
It's coming though. We're gonna get more rain. Do you need more rain?
And we've had
full?
30 inches so far. Pond is not full.
What is the? I mean, you said up to 80 in Yorkville. What's your average out on the?
Over the last 25 years, it's been about 40, I would say. But we've had wild swings. So from 12 to 15, it was under 30. From 20 and 21, it was under 20. Meaning we got, I want to say 17 inches in 21. Just annihilated our
Nothing.
production.
Yeah.
And then in 22, we got 30 inches where everybody else had a drought. But because the vines were so thirsty. So 22, the way I think about rain is after 4 inches, usually in October, the creeks start running. In 22, after 2 years of just brutal drought, we had a 10-inch rain in October, a 10-inch rain. Like it was almost back to back.
At end of October.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Atmospheric
the
river.
creeks didn't run.
Just soaked all up.
It was a sponge. Yeah. And so our vines didn't produce much better in 22 than they did in 20 and 21, but they, like, I think it was great for them. And then this year we got a normal.
Sam, does Enterprise need more rain right now?
I mean, I think everybody's enjoying the sun, to be honest. We had a good amount of rain. We're about 2/3 to an annual, 30 is about what we're getting around here, at about in the 20s, low 20s right now. I think the next couple of weeks might get us pretty close to a season's worth of rain.
We're predicted to get 7 more inches, so we'll be at 37.
Yeah, I mean, it's to answer your question, John. I think it needs to dry out a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, can you walk in your back? I can't still walk in my backyard. It's been a week since our last rain. It just, the ground is wet. Got to start pruning, because the other thing that's happening in between these, started to try this last week, in between the sort of waves of storms, it got up to 70 degrees the other day.
Yeah.
So, things are going to start growing. No bud break yet, but things are going to start growing soon.
Yeah. Are you not pruning it?
Oh, we're pruning as much as we can, but when we don't prune in the rain.
Right.
I mean, acacia trees are totally out.
Oh, tell me about it. And the mustard's blooming.
And the mustard's, been out for a couple weeks. So, yeah.
Sounds like a song.
The mustard.
Achoo.
So my neighbor has a vineyard at 2,700 feet looking out over the ocean.
Wow.
Called Signal Ridge. And they have adjusted their pruning radically, such that they prune 6, I think they're cane or cordon prune, but they will prune to 6 inches and encourage the vine to go, and then come back and prune again weeks later, so that the bottom bud, because you got apical dominance on the bud out, so that the bottom bud has not budded out when they get a massive rain in May. And so they've figured out how to bud out 1 week later in May based on their pruning. And I think pruning decisions are so local, like
Totally.
And it's
Hyper local.
Yeah.
And why do you say that? Explain that a little bit. I mean, because of
the microclimate of and exposure of each vineyard site, and then also the back end of that is like when you want that vineyard to get ripe,
right.
Or like how late you want it to ride into the growing season,
right. I think a lot of people don't understand that there's actually control that happens there.
And especially, if you're an Enterprise Vineyards, or imagine the pruning priorities and plan that somebody like Brené is going to make at Monte Rosso. Every single one, just because it's the same variety doesn't mean it needs to be pruned at the same time, depending on its exposure and soil type and the whole thing. So,
and it's historically when it pushes out,
right? And then what they're doing right there, that signal. I mean, basically double pruning.
Yes.
Which
twice. Is expensive.
That's expensive, really.
But they went from 1 ton per acre to 3.
Right. Yeah.
Because they're not getting hammered by rain in May.
Right. I definitely.
I mean,
changes the bloom schedule.
Yeah, when you're if you're in bloom,
gets you to
days,
ripening and a cooler time of year. I mean, the whole thing.
Yeah. Joan just arrived.
Yes.
And Joan and I used to go to Hawaii together. Kauai.
And
Burgundy.
Nice.
If you had to choose, that's a tough.
Apparently Joan's known well here, but yeah,
She's in the neighborhood.
we haven't seen each other for years.
Yeah.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
We're all Cash's people.
Right.
Really.
It's all about cash.
Of Sonoma.
Yeah, that it is. Cash.
Orchard Place.
I need to meet Cash.
Yeah, you know.
It's probably under the table right now.
Yeah,
So.
he'll be out here in a minute.
Wait, is it a cat? Your dog. Okay, sorry. Sorry, I don't do social media.
You know what? It has been years since
Yes.
you guys have caught it.
Yeah. I just said, no, my baby.
Wait, is it?
My love child.
Yeah.
Don't you remember that night?
Ouch. Doug.
I think we're. What's that?
If we were taking care of your child all day long, Joan, I think I'd have to charge you more.
Wait,
Cash
is that
makes us
the
money.
dog?
Yeah.
Oh, I met Cash before I met any.
Oh yeah,
He
when you
greeted me.
got here. Before-
Yeah, he was like, "Hey,
I don't know where I am. I don't know who I'm
it's
supposed
time
to
for
see.
you to pet me. I'm gonna drool all over
Here's
you,
the-
and you're gonna pet
I don't know where my mom is, but she's around here somewhere.
Exactly.
Yeah. He's a
As long as he
he's a
drooled on
latchkey
you,
dog.
you're in now.
He's
So.
totally a latchkey dog.
As I was driving away today, I saw him out there on the porch just looking at my car. Going, oh, there
Cash
you
comes to
go.
all of our staff meetings.
True.
He greets all of our customers.
Someday he's gonna write a book.
The Cash book.
Yeah.
How do
The
you
world,
spell Cash?
the world through Cash.
Cash. $CA$H.
Gotcha.
That's why I had to get the microphone in to make sure that.
Slightly ghetto.
Hey, it's Cash.
Yeah, Cash with
Shall we?
$. Because he came from LA. It's the very bad part.
All right.
Hollywood.
Hollywood.
Let's just say the bad part.
North Hollywood.
All right. Well, Doug, thank you very much. This has been great. Why don't
fun.
you
Thank
shout
you.
out the all your social media stuff that you're not on and the websites
That's
again.
right. No, I've hired good people.
Okay, good.
We are.
You
on
can shout them out then right now.
We are on Instagram. Kristen, Sean, and Uli, who lives here, actually helped start our Instagram efforts. She's a scribe, I think. But yeah, so we're on Instagram as
Yeah.
Breggo Cellars and Lichen Estate.
Okay.
Of course, I know that.
Yeah.
But just search Lichen Estate.
on the
There aren't very
bottom.
many. of us.
And then shout out the acapella concert one more time.
Oh.
The date.
For the town of Sonoma in Sebastiani Theater, March 13th. I think that a couple other a cappella choirs from the high schools locally, like Justin's choir, is
Cool.
coming. So we'd love you
Like
to
performing or
Yes,
filling seats?
performing.
Okay.
Yeah, no, we count on the parents to fill seats.
That's how these things work, right?
Yes.
And
And then she'll probably be performing at Sonoma Academy. I think it's Sunday night the 10th,
yeah.
but not certain.
Okay. And then lastly, I know that as we talked about, you have to commit to drive to Anderson Valley, but if you need a place to stay,
Oh,
I
Yeah.
think that you know a place.
We do. We have a cottage, a 3-bedroom cottage that can, if you're cozy, you can put 6 people in it. And then we have an Airstream above the vineyard, which is spectacular for 2 people. Yep. And just look at our website. So Breggo.com and lichenestate.com, they're connected. So they're kind of one large connected website. We have 2 tasting rooms. We'd love you to join us at both. And, buy a lot of wine.
That's the idea.
Right.
Buy more wine.
Every time,
Drink a lot of wine.
drink
Yeah.
more Pinot.
Don't don't just let
Everything.
it pile up in your cellar.
and drink Lichen
Enjoy
today.
it
So,
while you can.
well, Doug, thank you so very much for coming on. Great guest, much
Pleasure. Thank you
appreciated.
for having me.
And Joan, always good to see you and
Yeah,
Cash.
always
I will always see Cash. Sam,
Sam, you
hope
got
you've had a
anything?
great day. And
Do I have anything?
Do you have anything?
Surprisingly, I don't think we have an event to push at the moment. Moon Mountain District tasting event tickets are on sale. That's June 1st. We're gonna have a Vinyl Sunday the week after. Oh, the day after that. Oh, right. Find us at the High Museum. Paul and Jasmine decamping for Atlanta in March, and then the Tulsa.
Hoity-toity stuff.
We're super bougie.
and the High Museum.
And then so that's the High Museum in Atlanta. Their art museum. They do a big wine event, 3-day wine auction, tasting extravaganza. The Tulsa, which is the
Tulsa Town.
What is Tulsa time right now?
Tulsa time, baby.
The Philbrook Museum, their art museum, they do it every other year, but it's like crazy.
Number 5.
Yeah, it's like the 5th largest wine auction in the country, but it happens every other year. And that same time will be up in Walla Walla,
Hospice.
Washington for
Yeah.
Hospice to Run. So it's going to be a busy spring.
That's the way we want it.
Phil sent
Doug,
me
you got
email
something?
Doug,
and
one
stuff
more.
coming out soon.
Yeah, I didn't know this was part of it, and I'm a failure.
Yeah, shout out your event.
Failure as a president. So the Anderson Valley Wine Growers this coming weekend is having the White Wine Festival. Used to be the Alsatian Wine Festival.
Oh yeah.
It's awesome. It's going to be wet, but it's all inside, and you're going to love it.
There'll be plenty of acid. Don't worry about it being wet.
That's right. You'll lose your mind.
Wait, when is this party?
and then Pinot Fest. We do Pinot Fest the 3rd weekend of May every year. It usually sells out quickly. I think tickets have been on sale. I think they're early bird tickets, but those are probably gone. And those are our 2 biggest events of the year.
Okay.
They're awesome. Like they feature. They're different from other places.
Events that
yeah, I mean
only have Pinot.
only Anderson Valley Pinot.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So
your
you get-
own Pinot
Yeah, you
Fest.
get
Got
50 different wines from Anderson Valley, wineries from Anderson Valley. More than half of them are from outside the valley.
Right.
And you get great wine. Rotor does like a bubble lounge where you get Cristal and whatnot. That's made out of Pinot. It's all
Cool.
It's fun. So yeah,
That's Cristal's. The most appealing thing about Cristal is that it's made out of Pinot. Totally. that's.
Ouch.
yeah.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening, and we will talk to you guys next week. All right. Be good.